the Durham report, which was released yesterday in the late afternoon, and here's what they found. Essentially, why was it launched to begin with? In the beginning, John Durham was asked, you're a great investigator, you're apolitical, so Bill Barr asked him to go ahead and find out if there was misconduct leading to the investigation into Donald Trump and the Mueller report, which turned out to basically exonerate Donald Trump and his entire staff, but plagued his entire 4 years. So in 2018, 2019, Durham went out and started probing. He would spend $6.5 million, have 400-plus subpoenas, but in the end would come to this conclusion. After a couple of trials of getting Klein Smith to admit that he falsified a FISA application, also getting two others to court, they would ultimately be indicted, but they wouldn't be convicted. This is what he found. We concluded that the department and the FBI failed to uphold their mission to strict fidelity to the law in connection to certain events and activities described in the report. We go on. The department did not adequately examine or question the materials that they got. So what he's saying is this. The FBI gets a whole bunch of stuff. It's all unverified, and they launch Operation Crossfire Hurricane. There was no reason to do it. That would cost millions of dollars. It would actually destroy the Trump team in many respects. It would ruin people who would have to lawyer up and would have to cut plea deals in Paul Manafort's case. He would actually go to solitary confinement. So where are we at now? What could we say? Before we examine deeply, Michael Sussman. He was working for Hillary Clinton, walked into James Baker and says, hey, I got this information. As a good American, I want you to know how corrupt Donald Trump is, and here it is. Did not say he had a prior employer and where he had a point of view, but he got exonerated on that in court. It's tough when you're in the Washington, D.C. jury. Then you have Mark Elias. He is the political operative with the legal background, is behind all of this, and Hillary Clinton's lawyer as well. Then you have James Baker. This guy is everywhere. Reportedly, he was outraged to find out that it was Hillary Clinton's team that was the one who launched this probe falsely into Donald Trump, came up with the dossier, paid for it, and he said when he got this information, he didn't know Hillary Clinton was behind it. I doubt it. He ended up being at the top of Twitter, all over the Twitter files. He is everywhere. Then you have Christopher Steele. He never went to Russia, had contacts in Russia, spent all this money for the so-called Steele dossier. None of it was verified. He started to panic. He said, I'll give $1 million to anyone who could verify everything in my Steele report. And guess what? Nobody came up with anything, which gives me to Igor Tishenko. He was, again, indicted but not convicted, and he should have been. This guy came up and actually compiled the information that was in the Steele dossier. None of it was verified. All of it was made up, and it plagued this administration, the 4 years of the Trump administration, from day one. I have no idea how that guy got off. Andrew McCabe should be embarrassed to put himself out in the street, let alone on television. He was atop a Crossfire Hurricane, and he should have been fired immediately. The saddest thing is he still has his benefits, even though he did retire. And Peter Strzok, he was given the portfolio to look over Operation Crossfire Hurricane. We know how much he hated Trump. We know about this, the smelly Walmart shoppers. And, you know, he said he had a plan in place should Trump actually win the election. He did win the election, but many people thought he was illegitimate. So how do you summarize 300 pages this quickly? Brett Tolman had a chance to page through it. He's a former federal prosecutor. And Brett, man, does the FBI look bad in this?
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me on. It's startling to read this, but I want us to take a step back and look at two things dependently on each other. First, you have a hoax that is made to look real, like a real investigation, and it's endorsed and pursued by the FBI, DOJ, the AG, the CIA, the vice president, and the president at the time in 2016. And then fast forward just a bit, and you have the same agencies, same organizations, and many of the same people making real evidence on the Hunter Biden laptop of real corruption, real collusion. And what do? They make that look like the hoax. So you have to look at both of these to understand that this is an op and not a real investigation. This is an effort, and it is an effort by those with power. And why do they get to do it, Brian? They get to do it because they have no transparency and no accountability. And once you give them that power without the accountability, you see what we get.
Hillary Clinton is buried in this controversy because she idiotically had these private email server with all this top secret information as former Secretary of State. So with all this pressure on her and James Comey calling that press conference, she has this brilliant idea. Let's get all the pressure on Trump and say he's collaborating with Russia to actually throw the election in his favor. And sure enough, in many ways, it would work. Crossfire Hurricane was, in fact, launched. It was McCabe to Peter Strzok to Lisa Page. Off they go. James Comey on top. Don't put anything in writing. Tell me all of it. Let me know how it goes. And then, stunningly, Trump wins. They don't stop. They pick up the pace. Somehow they maneuver in a way that gets the Mueller probe launched by making Jeff Sessions feel as though he's collaborating with Russia, which is mind-bogglingly stupid. He was a sitting senator at the time. And off and running, they go with the Mueller probe until William Barr gets in there and says, this is out of control, and lands the plane successfully. We don't get out of this. Then the IG report comes out. Then this report comes out. Here's what the FBI said in response. The conduct in 2016 and 2017, the special counsel Durham examined was the reason that the current FBI leadership already implemented dozens of corrected actions, which have now been in place for some time. And have those reforms been in place in 2016, the missteps identified in the report would have been prevented. Are you convinced, Brett, they are reformed?
Well, it's laughable in a response, and it's idiotic to believe that they're reformed. What has to happen next? The Congress has to, launch immediately subpoenas to each of these individuals, bring them in front of a congressional committee, and start to expose it. And at the same time, lawsuits and class action lawsuits need to be filed against the individuals and against the agencies. Even if they're not successful, it will highlight the need to either pare down immunity privileges or to be able to show some form of accountability. The American people are mad, Brian.
Not everybody. I'm watching the other channels. I'm watching the guy, Andrew Weissman, who's the one who launched the Mueller probe. He did all the work because Mueller lost his fastball 10 years ago. And he's saying this is a big nothing burger.
Well, they have to say that at this point, but you'll start to notice many that are looking at it closely, even on CNN, have started to suggest it's shocking that this had little and no backbone behind it and no foundation. It was an operation, Brian. It wasn't an investigation.
Right. Imagine being wrongly accused and actually spending time in jail for stuff you didn't do. Brett, thanks so much. Brett Tolman, trying to get his head around
this.
Thanks,
Brian.
And he spent his whole career in this.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.